Hey guys, welcome to another episode of Woman in Progress. I'm your host, Coach Lexi. If you don't know, now you know. But I actually have a very special guest today, Coach Jim Hallinan, and he is a lifestyle transformation coach as well. And he really focuses on my favorite topic, as y'all know, which is mindset, subconscious work, really the inner work that needs to be done to get the physical transformation that you want. So, Jim, you want to introduce yourself? Tell us a little bit more about your story, what got you here, and why you even give a fuck about self-sabotage, the inner work.
Yeah, it's wild because even just the work that I've been doing, which is a phrase people love to throw around, and it's like, what does that even fucking mean? Can we curse?
Right.
We can curse, right?
Oh, I curse like a sailor, so you're good.
But like the work that I've been doing, which obviously as we talk, we'll get into. I'm discovering a lot about myself and different things that kind of have led me here. And if you didn't know, I'm a full-time high school teacher. And I've been doing that. I'm just finishing up my 23rd year teaching. And after 23 years teaching high school students, I am transitioning to teaching elementary school to end my career, maybe over the next 10 years at elementary. That means something because it's never too late. You can't just, we don't have to stay stuck where we are. A lot of people, they stay stuck where they are in this career. They're not really happy. Something's not fulfilling them. And it's okay to transition, even though I'm staying in the same career. I want to be around kids that are happy, that are excited to see you. The high school kids drain me. They're all miserable. They stare at their phones. They complain about just going outside. So I'm not going to allow that environment to poison me any longer. I'm switching over. So I'm a public school teacher. I've always been involved in some form of education. When I was in high school, I was involved in a youth group and leading small group activities through an organization that was outside of a church, but a Christian-based organization. In college, I taught swim lessons and lifeguarded when I could have had an opportunity to make a lot of money as a bartender at a bar restaurant near Princeton University. I didn't go there, but I went to a college nearby. And so everything that I've done has always been in that like acts of service type of a thing. And I love teaching. I love making something that might seem complicated very simple. And I feel like that's a gift of mine, which part of the work I'm doing is acknowledging things that I'm gifted at. I'm gifted at it. And it feels weird sometimes to say something confidently, but that has led me to everything. And at 30 years old, 29, 30 years old, I started a driving school because I taught 10th grade phys ed, and part of that was driver's ed. Started a driving school, and that was teaching kids how to drive. And through teaching high school and seeing what courses are offered, we have like advanced placement pottery at my school. And there is nothing in the realm of exercise, science, nutrition, fitness, anything like that. So I proposed a course that would be an elective for students in nutrition and kinesiology. It got approved, and I went back to school, got my master's in exercise science and sport nutrition, wrote the curriculum, and started teaching that class. While teaching that class, I'm trying to explain to kids at this point, it's like maybe 2016, 2017, and nutrition coaching was becoming a thing. It was not a common thing. Like you didn't just, it's not, if you said, hey, I have a nutrition coach, the average person wouldn't say, oh yeah. They'd be like, what the hell is that? Like they know what a personal trainer is. And I'm trying to teach these kids, like, you can actually create a career if you really care about people and you want to help them and you understand all the nuance around this stuff. And in the midst of teaching that first year of that course, I started a nutrition coaching business, which, because I'm trying to tell these kids, you can do this. So I just did it. And so when I got started, I just started going around the gyms and telling them I'm a nutrition coach and that I do free seminars. And I started doing seminars, and that's how the business got started. And it grew fairly rapidly in the first couple of years, but it was all about seeing high school people struggle with the same body image issues that adults are struggling with. And to see like these are the most formidable years of their lives and nothing changed. Nothing's changed with teenagers and 45-year-olds. It's the same struggle. What should I eat? I can't be consistent. Feeling insecure about their body and, wanting acceptance from people based on their body. And that's what got me into wanting to coach. It was to show them that this is a thing that you can do even starting that class, a big part of it was seeing kids struggle with body image issues, males and females. And I think, females are obviously, we know that they struggle with the stuff, and males tend to get like discarded. But I
Right.
see these high school kids who are scrawny and drastically insecure because of that.
Mhm.
And to try to teach them what it would entail to put on weight and put on that size. But I'm seeing it with both sexes when it comes to the insecurities of their body. So yeah, it's kind of, I've always been a teacher in some way, and this is just the next extension of that. And then, as from our conversation that we've had before, my coaching is starting to evolve into working on more of that inner work, because the struggle that I consistently see with clients is they everybody knows what to do. Even people who don't know what to do know what to do. Like,
Right.
what healthy food is.
Right.
What you should order at a restaurant. Like, what should I get? It's not the chicken wings and fries. You know that. But what you should get. So people know it, but they don't they don't necessarily implement it. And then they get into these cycles where they're super strict with something, or they do an extreme diet, and then they gain all the weight back. And all of that is because of what's going on in their brain, more than anything. So that's really my focus now, is helping people with that aspect of things, and knowing that once some of that stuff can get taken care of, the body change and the body transformation is going to be that much easier.
Mhm.
And even if it's not an extreme change, you fix a lot of stuff inside, you can actually learn to start being happy with this quote unquote imperfect body. Because what the hell is a perfect body anyway? But
Right.
yeah,
I
that's
love
kind of
that.
all that.
I love that. I absolutely love that. And I had a few different kind of questions pop in my head, but just to kind of go off of what you were saying, like for those listening, you can research like all like what to eat, like like all the things, but then what is that gap then? Like you mentioned earlier, like you do these strict diets or you're really really strict and you can really really stick to something for x amount of time, and I've seen it in my parents. Like I always say, like I'm the generational pattern breaker, and that's the same thing with a lot of people, right? So what is that quote unquote inner work then? Like how does
Yeah.
that show up?
So there could be a ton of different ways that people can go about doing it. And part of something that I've been working on is structuring steps through that. So for me, what the beginning stages of things are: one, simply finding what your strengths are. And you can go find a strength finder online. I have a specific one that I'll use, but and there's a ton out there. And just finding what your strengths are. By finding what your strengths are, you then get to start to see how you're using these strengths in your everyday life, and then you get to start to purposefully use them in your everyday life. And the group that I'm running with now with this, to see people start, like for example, one of her strengths was courage. And she said, knowing that courage is one of my strengths, I used that this week with my boss and confronted him about an email that everybody on the team was upset about. And I'm like, I need to tap into this courage, and had this conversation with the boss. And it led to positive things. So, one thing, just to be able to own your strengths, like me being able to say, I'm a good teacher. I'm good at relaying information to people in a way that makes sense. And that's the first step. It can be the first step. Another thing which I think is huge is people developing and discovering their values. I
Mhm.
think a big problem in the space is you have coaches that are telling people, this is the way to live your life.
Right.
This is what you got to, you discipline, you got to find your motivation. And they're saying all these things to somebody. And then a lot of those things might not align with who that person truly is.
Mm.
And they get turned off by it. They feel like they can't meet the expectation or the value of somebody else
Mm.
because it's not part of their core values. And that's where a lot of that self-sabotage might start to come in.
Mm.
So as people start to develop and understand their values or their principles that guide their life, they then can start to learn to not be complaining about things that are not in line with their values.
Mm.
So you have people, I think probably the average listener, the average client out there, they probably do good during the week, and then the weekends fall apart.
Right.
So you then complain, I'm not making progress. What's wrong with me? All this kind of stuff. So as you start to dig into your values, if maybe part of your health values is the social health, the emotional, the mental, and the physical health, if they're all part of your values, then you have to start looking at your life. Hey, I fuel well. I eat well throughout the week, and it allows me to have good energy and focus during the week. And I really enjoy my social time with my friends. This is an important part of my life. So they can maybe not get so hung up on why they're not making progress on the scale, because they are seeing that they do value their social life and the interactions that they have with people. Once they start to realize that, okay, now the reason I like going out is the social aspect, I can start to now focus on this time that I'm spending with people. I don't have to get all the beers, all the wings, and all the fries. I'm not going out and repeating these patterns because that's just what you do when you go out. I eat all this good, healthy food at home. This is my chance to eat this garbage. I'm going out for this social aspect. This is what I'm here for. I can choose to order a meal that might be a little better, a little healthier, and still enjoy that social aspect. Where people don't start to recognize that, they don't know how to enjoy the social aspect without indulging in all the things that they've always indulged with in the past.
Right.
So that's part of it too. Then you start getting deeper, looking into those self-limiting beliefs. And that's kind of like starts to fall into the shadow work stuff, you know.
My
And
fave.
I know.
Listening are like, yes.
Yeah. And it's funny because like if you start to hear these words like frequency and shadow work, they're not anything different than the words that you might be used to. How many times has every single person been like, we're just not on the same wavelength?
Or you hear,
Totally normal sentence.
they're not my vibe, or they had a weird
Yeah.
vibe. Like you're literally saying
Yeah.
vibration.
It's the same thing. Yeah, as vibration, it's the same thing as frequency. Same thing. Wavelength, frequency. It's literally, that's what frequency is the wavelength.
Right.
So don't be so intimidated by these words. They're not all woo-woo. They're words that you've always used. Most people have said about themselves probably, I got this dark side in me.
Yeah.
That's the shadow. That's all that is. So when you start to dig into the shadow or this dark side, what is that? So you create awareness about it. What's the dark side? What's the shadow? It's the part of you that you don't feel comfortable showing to people. You know, so you have a light on you. That's what people see. The shadow is what's behind you. The people don't see. You know, it's kind of that dark side of you. And that could be manifesting in all kinds of different ways. And there are prompts and steps and questions you can ask yourself. But the general self-limiting beliefs that people have might be, this is just how I am. You mentioned breaking generational cycles and curses and all that. This is how I am. This is how my family is. That's a self-limiting belief. You know, just because your family's this way doesn't mean that you have to be that way. It's an identity that you've just adopted. I always fail at these things. I can't do that. It's not worth it. What's the point? I'm good enough. All those sentences that people tend to say to get out of pursuing what they do want to pursue, that they're visualizing, but that shadow voice, that self-limiting belief comes in, and that's ego just protecting you, you know. And it's not always protecting you in a good way. It's protecting your ego. It's like, if I don't try, then I don't have to look stupid for failing
Or beat myself up.
Yeah. So that's when it starts getting into that like deeper stuff of figuring out, where do these self-limiting beliefs come from. It could be as simple as, you know, maybe when you were a kid, you drew a picture and you kept trying to show your parents and they were too busy to look at it, didn't acknowledge it. And you're like, all right, I guess this isn't me. And then you shut down this creative part of you. Or maybe you did have a passion for drawing or painting or something like that. So it could be as simple as that. You know, it could be sometimes maybe your parents told you you've had enough because you were a little overweight or chubby as a 12-year-old, which who really cares? And now as an adult, you're either always thinking you eating too much, or you go the opposite direction and you're thinking, no one's going to tell me I've had enough. I can eat all the Fruit Loops I want. You know, so once you start to once you start to look into those things, you start to uncover it. But that awareness is such a huge part. I forget how it was exactly said, but these things that kind of attack our brain, the shadow stuff, once we create awareness about it, it can't really attack us anymore. It's like, oh, it's there. I can put this book back on the shelf, kind of a thing. And I forget, he said it in such a much more eloquent way that made sense than what I'm just saying right now. But the point being, creating that awareness about it, about that dark side of you, about those parts of your personality that You're not confident showing people because you think you're going to be rejected because your parents didn't care about your artwork when you were 9 years old, or you didn't get the girl or the guy because you didn't fit a physical look that guy or girl went for in high school, and we start to shut down. So those are beginning stages, as far as I'm concerned. Finding your strengths, really discovering your values. That's a big one. And then starting to ask those questions. If I was totally accepted for every aspect of me, what would I do?
Mm.
How would I act? And that's kind of that shadow stuff.
Wow.
That was
That's
a lot.
fascinating. No, I love it. I was like, this is gonna be very valuable for people who are listening. Because I feel like you broke it up in a very like a way that you can like digest it. Like, okay,
Like
cool. And
chunks.
yeah, and for those listening, like it doesn't always have to be like step one, step two, but I'm that way where I'm like, okay, like inner work, like where do I start? Do I journal? Like, do I like what do I do? So I feel like
Yeah.
actually knowing like what are your strengths? For me, like how you said, courage is one of my strengths.
Yeah.
Listening, empathy, being of service, like those are my strengths. So in those moments where I do feel like an imposter, or I am having an identity shift, where you mentioned like I am always this way. For those listening, if I were to ask you like how would you define identity, what would you think? Like, what would you say? And most likely, whatever it is that you're thinking or saying is what it is. It's how you identify
Yeah.
yourself to be up until this point. And I remember that kind of turning point in my own health and wellness journey where I was just like, you know what? I guess there's just people who are born healthy and fit and people who are born not. And I guess I'm just one of those people that like it's not. And it's always going to be a
Yeah.
struggle. I always was like going 0 to 100, restricting foods, then binge eating, real binge eating. Guys, there's a difference. But like
Yeah.
really, really going in. And then I asked myself, like, Lexi, do you really want to settle for that? Like, you really want to have the rest of your life struggling with your relationship with food, your eating patterns? Is that really what you want the standard you want to have for yourself? Like, look at X people around you. Is that where you want to be? Or do you want to be the woman in her 60s who is healthy, strong, fit, and knows how to make it fit? And I was like, that there has to be a different way. And so
Yeah.
that identity shift, once you actually start to work towards that, that's where a lot of like that self-doubt, the weaknesses, the shadow parts are reflected onto you, which is then when
They
self-sabotage
come.
takes place, right? It's
Yeah,
like
and they
that's
come in
the flaw.
strong. When
Strong
you try to shift your identity, they come in overdrive
right.
because they don't have to work that hard when you've settled into that identity and
Hmm.
you're comfortable. And then you start trying to shift that, and the ego's like, "Whoa, whoa, nice try, mother effer."
Yeah.
It's like, "Whoa, whoa," because we had mentioned it even when you were on our podcast. It's the comfort is just familiarity, and that's what I think people don't realize. Comfort is familiarity, no matter how uncomfortable that familiarity is. I mean, that's such an important thing to understand. And I like the analogy. It's like, we're the neuroplasticity. Our brains change. They
Yeah.
change. We can change the wiring in our brain, but you can't do it with a 180. You got a train going down a track. If it's going to do a 180-degree turn, it takes a long time to make that turn.
Hmm.
If you were to just make this turn over the course of like 100 feet wide, that thing's going to go off the track. I mean, it's going to take potentially miles. It's going that fast for it to turn around. So it takes a lot of work, consistency to retrain the brain and for it to think differently, because you're just laying these neural pathways in your brain. And the neural pathways are that's the unconscious, and they just act. So
Right.
the unconscious is just there doing its thing out of familiarity. And yeah, and that's like that ego that's usually in there, tied in, just keeping you safe,
Yeah.
which is
It's
awful. Like, I mean, it's like
yeah.
nobody thinks a helicopter or a bulldozer parent is doing a good job,
Right.
but that's what you're doing. You're keeping yourself safe, but you're not ever allowing that kid to experience adversity.
Right.
It's like we have to go through that adversity and those challenges, to be able to come out on the other side, to be able to actually make it through that change. It's the adversity of it.
Right. I love how you said the adversity, because I think even when people get into like spirituality and really going on this journey, and that was even me, it's like you think that just because you're on the spiritual journey or like you're healing, that means you're not going to have adversity or like less
Yeah.
adversity. And it's not true.
Yeah.
Actually, when you go on this path, and that's why your ego is yelling at you to just like, you can't do this. What do you think you are?
Yep.
And by the way, guys, the louder that is, that's when you know you're doing something right,
Yeah.
because you're actually getting out of your comfort zone. But
It's,
yeah,
like most people think ego is I'm the man,
right.
but that it's like, so some people are out there going, I don't have an ego. I think I'm terrible. Yeah. That's your ego.
Yeah.
You know, like
Yeah.
your ego's, yeah, egotistical might be a little different than your ego, but yeah. But as you mentioned, like identity, that's something too that I think is important for people to even break down. If you were to ask somebody, like you asked the question, yeah, somebody like, what is your identity? They start saying things that are external. Like,
Right.
oh, I'm a teacher. I'm a coach. Well, what's your identity in fitness space? I've always been out of shape. I don't eat healthy. Like, and they start to characterize themselves. Where if you were to take all of that stuff away,
Mm,
that's your identity.
mm,
Take your job away, take your body away, because you don't say, what are you? I am body. You say, this is my body, just like
right.
it's my car. Well, a car is not you. So therefore, your body is not you. So therefore, who are you? Let's
Mhm,
strip everything away. And now, when you start to actually strip everything away, that includes the self limiting beliefs and everything, you are just this being, underneath it all.
mm,
So even that, to strip everything away and recognize you are way more than all the characteristics that you would describe yourself. And I think it was in the book Untethered Soul, where if you ask you like, oh, who are you? You're going to describe yourself like you said now.
mhm,
You're not going to describe the 9-year-old version of you,
right.
but that was still you. You were a 9-year-old version of you. You were in all those versions.
Mhm,
So right now where you are is just a different version,
mm,
but you are still inside all of that. So why do we keep describing ourselves and who we are as just this current version? You're not. Who are you? Well, I'm breastfeeding. I was a breastfeeding child. I had to learn how to walk one day, but that was still us. We're underneath all of that stuff. So I think when people realize that, and that they can start to see maybe their power that they have in their life, and view things, differently.
Right. I love that you brought that up, because it's one of those things, like even when we talk about this stuff, I'll hear a lot from people like, well, I've always been told XYZ about myself, or I've always
Mm,
been told I was no good, or I've always been told that I wouldn't amount to anything. I've always been told. And it's like we take that on. Like we never actually question, like, do I even want to take this on? Right. And
mm,
what would that actually
mm,
look like? And that's one of my favorite things, is like stripping away like all this stuff and things, and how we might identify ourselves now. It's like, what is left? And where are you extracting your self-worth? Where were you taught to extract your self-worth, your self-confidence? And I had a coaching call with a client the other day. She's like, huh, I never thought about that. And her answer was, I'm sure a lot of people, is like appearance and achievements. It's like that's where
yep.
you were learned to extract a lot of your self-worth, self-confidence, and is from appearance and achievements. And that doesn't mean you have to settle. Like if you're not happy with those things, like, and you have that pure desire, like, go for it. And it has, you gotta check in with yourself of like, what do you think this is going to fill? Because I promise you, you can get to that place and still feel like it's not enough, because it really
A
comes down
hundred
to that
percent.
core wound of like, I'm not good enough, right? Or
Yeah.
feeling like you weren't good enough. So,
Mhm.
um, I have another question. Like you mentioned how, you were working with high schoolers, but you're like, oh my God, can't be in this environment. Got to go to the kindergartners. And I remember being a high schooler, and like, I was a teacher's pet, but like, not teacher's pet, but I was just a goody two shoes, get good grades, friends with the teachers. You know what I mean? Um,
Yeah.
but what do you feel like changes from like these happy kids that are like, Mr. Jim, whatever. And then
Yeah.
the teenagers that are like, ugh, this is fucking stupid.
Yeah.
Like, what changes from then to now?
Well, there's just a difference in the way people are in general. But high school students, the way that they've changed over the past 10 to 15 years is drastic since social media and stuff like that. And you feel like that old guy saying, Social media. It's just a clear as day difference. I mean, my first 10 years teaching, if I had a homeroom, kids would be around my desk all the time. Talk,
Mhm.
hey, what's going on? Da-da-da, just having conversation. And once, maybe mid 2010s, 2050, once the social media stuff became more prevalent, they're just at their desk. They're not having conversation. They're not looking out. They're not making eye contact. There's much more comparison to other people, where back in the day, maybe you're just
Mhm.
comparing yourself to a magazine, what somebody looks like in a magazine. Now you're comparing yourself to like your peers, and the way that they're presenting themselves, how many people they have following them. Since COVID, it's been an even more drastic change in terms of the personality of these students. Now, I will miss, because there are still plenty of kids that are just awesome. I'm going to miss teaching senior health, where I get into nutrition. I answer these questions. I simplify the stuff for them. I talk about anxiety, stress, mental health with senior health, where a lot of the other health teachers are talking about STDs. I'm like, I'm not spending 2 weeks on STDs. You got something. This, I literally will say this. I'll go, here's our STD lesson. You got something burning, itching, and painful down there, go to a doctor.
Right.
We're not, I don't need you to memorize if it's viral or bacterial. I don't need you to diagnose yourself. All right.
Right.
So we talk about other things. So I will miss that. I will miss those conversations with these kids as they're moving on into their life, and trying to inspire them in ways and ask them questions when they say that this is what I want to go to school for, why,
Mhm.
and then see, and you start to see those questions they already have, but they're doing exactly what you said before. Like, they're just following what they've been told,
Mhm.
whether it's what they believe in about themselves, or following a career because this is a safe career, or this makes good money, or whatever it might be. And then they're already off to a rough start. But that 15-20% of students that are awesome, that I love, unfortunately, their vibration cannot drown out the crabs in the bucket of the other, percentage of students that just drag you down. So I think that the cell phone generation is a big part. Drastically lower expectations,
Mm.
um, less consequences for actions,
Mm.
all that kind of stuff. They're up way too late. Their sleep is horrible. They're on their phones probably way too late. They come in exhausted. They're miserable. I mean,
Mm.
my son came to Bring Your Kid to Work Day a couple years ago, and he was not asking this sarcastically. He was probably in third grade. He goes, "Is today pajama day?" I teach 18-year-olds. Is today pajama day? I go, "No, this is how these people dress." He's like, "What?"
Yeah, and this
So
is
yeah,
adulthood, right? So you
yeah,
mentioned like, because this is fucking stuff that I also had to work through and help our clients work through. Is as simple as like going to bed, having better ways to cope with boredom and stimulating yourself in different ways. And so you mentioned anxiety, stress, things like that. And so I kind of want to tie that back to like our conversation earlier of like adulthood, right? And one of the main things, especially when it comes to developing yourself, self sabotage, all that stuff, in my experience, has been your ability to cope with change and your ability to cope and like stretch your capacity for adversity and
mm,
stress and anxiety, right? Like a lot of our average client or the average listener, usually everything goes out the window the second life gets chaotic, the second life is like imperfect. I know even for me, like when I used to extract a lot of my self-worth from like achievement, the second that like work got very hectic, health, fitness out the window, didn't even like, just all of it out the window. I would even tell myself it's just not a priority right now, until
yeah,
it bit me in the ass and I was depressed and up 20 pounds and felt inflamed and like shit about myself.
yeah.
So like, what are your favorite ways to help people cope with that gap between, okay, I want to change, but like this inner critic, the ego's getting louder and louder. Like, do I journal? Do I meditate? Like, how do I actually cope with these negative emotions that are coming up? Because all I know how to do is avoid and just go into
Mm,
avoidance and just like ghost everybody around me.
yeah.
Eat, stress eat, or not eat, and like, or scroll to death. So, like, what are your favorite ways to help people cope with change in better, healthier ways so they can actually see the change they want?
Yeah, and this is where, so you have the spiritual woo woo people maybe not talking about the physical, and then you have the physical people not talking about the spiritual aspect and the mental aspect. we need to understand that this is all interconnected. So
Connected.
you might have people who are perfect with their nutrition and their training, and they are tore up gut health wise or other health issues because they're so unaligned. And
Mm.
the way that our brain and our emotions and unalignment affects our physical body just to be able to digest or have, good sleep or whatever it might be, is drastic. We can't ignore that.
Mm.
And the same thing in reverse. If somebody is starting to really work on themselves in this maybe spiritual or emotional mental health aspect, there needs to be physical things. And that's where it goes, like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, and physical is right there. I think for me, I'm very similar. Like what you said, when things are all crazy, things go out the window. All right. Like I haven't trained in 3 months, legitimately 3 months. I've worked out
And there's a hack
maybe.
squat right behind you.
There's a hack squat. I did it the other day.
Okay, good.
So I've worked out a
Okay.
handful of times,
Okay.
but I have not trained consistently at all. A ton of things are going on in my life, and I've been able to handle it mentally, emotionally, all that stuff much better because of the work that I've been doing the last couple of years. But I still have these staples in my life. I
Mm.
think if people can just start to establish at least some staples that no matter how crazy life is, these are physical staples that I can do to at least take care of the physical so that it doesn't make the mental worse. So
Mm.
whether that is your sleep routine, because if you're not sleeping well, mental health goes down.
Right.
If you're eating garbage food, mental health goes down. They did a study in like a behavioral school, like the school where the kids who get kicked out and they have to go to this school because they can't act right, where they changed out their entire lunch program to like this salad bar and all fresh foods, and discipline went down. Like they had less discipline issues at this disciplinary school when they changed the way that they fed them.
Wow.
I spoke at a board meeting around COVID in my school district, where I'm a teacher, a parent, business owner, resident, all in my town, and talked about the food that we're providing to these kids. And it's garbage breakfast food. And they send it out with a letter saying studies show that a nutritious breakfast increases academic performance. But then they're giving them French toast sticks. They're giving
Cinnamon
them
Toast
Pop
Crunch.
Tarts. They're giving them cinnamon rolls. Yep. Garbage food. So I bring this up at this, and this is around COVID. I go, we know that the number one risk factor for hospitalization and death is obesity. What are we going to do to change what we're offering kids? The superintendent calls me into a meeting, and he's like, I see. He followed me on Instagram. He's like, I see how you're feeding your kid, and it's great and all this, but a lot of these kids are disadvantaged. They don't have that opportunity. I go, can I be frank with you? I go, you're making them more disadvantaged by giving them this stuff at breakfast.
Mm.
And you could say all day that you want me to be part of some nutrition thing until you guys are actually willing to change what you're feeding them. I want nothing to do with any kind of like a nutrition committee, unless we're going to start talking about only providing fresh fruit, Greek yogurt, things like that, versus the sugar bombs that is negatively affecting their performance. So when we're eating garbage food on a regular basis, it negatively affects performance. It's associated with ADHD. It's associated with depression. Serotonin is produced in our stomach. If we are eating garbage food, we're going to produce less serotonin, and then you wonder why you're depressed, why you're not. Again, I'm not saying that I'm not separating clinical depression from
Yeah.
regular old school, I'm in the dumps kind of thing. So having these staples, understanding that if I am taking care of some basic, simple physical things, sleep, food quality, water and hydration, reducing alcohol, because we know that that's going to increase anxiety the next day.
Right.
It's going to make us crave more junky food. Starting to establish those staples when things are going well is great. And if you're in a place where, hey, you haven't established when they're going great, life's chaotic anyway. You have to sleep anyway, right? Yep. So let's maybe sleep better. Let's try to set a time. You're eating food anyway, right? So let's maybe buy better things. And you know what to get that's better. Well, what should I get? Meat, veggies, get more of that stuff. Start to create those staples. That is huge in terms of how you're going to feel mentally, physically, digestively, energy wise, all that stuff through the chaos. Now, some things might fall by the wayside. Your training might fall by the wayside. That's okay. Do you have any time to just sit outside, get some movement? So I think it's important to create those physical things to help us with the mental, emotional, and spiritual aspects of our lives. And then I do think, like you had mentioned, the journaling and those types of things are great. It's tough for people. Like, what do you journal about?
Right.
So if you're figuring out what to journal about, you could look up journal prompts. You can get a book like the 5 Minute Journal. It's just a 5 minute little gratitude journal, or just start writing shit down. I've done that before. I'm like, I hate life right now, and you just start writing,
Break.
just like that free flow writing, and just see what comes up. Because typically, you solve your own problems. I am a big believer in everybody has the answers to all of their problems, um, and I want to help people. I want to help pull that out of people versus me trying to give them my solutions.
Right.
So it's like, you tell me what your physical action plan is that makes you feel good, what your nutrition plan is going to make you feel good, what's a sleep routine that's going to be realistic. Those types of things. I think the journaling could be a great thing. Meditation, you download Headspace. If anybody's listening who's a teacher, you get Headspace for free. Just Google Headspace educator thing, and you can create an account that's free. Otherwise, any of those meditation apps, the things they'll walk you through, they'll teach you. You can't fail meditation.
Right.
You can't like be winning meditation. You just do it, you know? And thoughts are going to come up. You can't control your thoughts. You're not your thoughts. You're the observer of your thoughts, all that kind of stuff.
Mhm.
And these thoughts come in, you let them go away. I think learning some breathing strategies is huge, especially you referenced the emotional eating thing. You're about to, you're about to go off the chain and eat. Breathe. Like, take a moment, do some box breathing. Might be breathe in for 4, hold for 4, breathe out for 4, hold for 4. Might be breathe in for 4 seconds in your nose, breathe out your mouth for 6 seconds. And just go through some breaths. Calm your nervous system down.
Mhm.
And if people don't believe that that's real, if you're anxious and excited, what happens to your breathing and your heart rate?
It
It
literally
increases.
shallow. Yeah, you at
Yep.
least for me, like I even notice I'm breathing shallow in my chest. I'm like, wait,
Yep.
whew,
Yep.
you know?
So we know our brain creates the shallow breathing and the increased heart rate. A thought creates a physical response. So now let's control the physical by slowing down our breathing and watch how quick the thoughts start to calm down.
Literally.
Understanding the physical and the mental, it's all connected. So if
Mhm.
the mental feels out of control, what's something physical I can do to help calm the brain a little bit? What's upsetting me right now? I forget, what is it? Acknowledge. I don't want to mess it up, but it's
Like the
basically what is it?
there's like rain, there's SNBR
Rain.
rain.
Recognize, acknowledge, investigate, non-identity.
Yes.
That one. I like that one. There's the hungry, angry, lonely, tired one.
Oh yeah, that one. There's like
You know?
SNBRR. Like there's so many techniques, but it all like it's
Yeah.
very simple. It's like breathe, recognize like what's coming up for you, and like don't attach to it, right? Like allow it to flow out. Like you don't have to be your thoughts. And I think also when you go on like this journey, whether it's spiritual, mental, whatever, it can be easy to feel like, oh no, it's happening again. Like, oh no, I'm losing control. Like I'm not, like these are all just thoughts. Like you can just let them flow. And you mentioned being the observer of your mind. I think my favorite like visual for this is like imagining you're a mountain. Like you're just a mountain. And I got this from a book. You're a mountain, and every cloud, every bird that passes by is simply your thoughts. And let's say one cloud passes by and it's like, I'm never going to get this thing right. You just observe it. You're the mountain, it passes by. But when you are always absorbing your thoughts instead of observing, then that makes you, it triggers you, right? Like, then you start to feel depressed or low motivation, right? Or you step on the scale, it's up a pound. When you're not aware of your thoughts, you just feel down, and then you feel less motivated and you start to make these decisions, and it's this domino effect. But when you can gain
Mhm.
awareness or use these techniques that we're talking about, you can actually take a deep breath and create awareness around like, what thoughts are kind of playing out for me right now? Like, how am I feeling? Oh, I just had a thought of like, fuck, I should have had that bread last night. Like, you don't
Yeah.
really understand, and understanding the scale is a whole different story, right? But really being able to step outside of yourself and have awareness, but being able to shift. And even if you can't shift, because I used to be frustrated, like I can't shift out of this like negative headspace. It's like sometimes it's just fucking okay to not be okay, and it doesn't have to be this big story around it. Like you just get to let it pass and then look at the physical things, right? Like the core habits, like how is my sleep? How is my gut health? right? Like, how is my stress levels? How are those things that are already a part of your everyday life, and how you double down or shift those things that are to support you and your mental health better?
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I mean, just like you are the sum of the five people around you. Your environment matters. So people who are struggling with these decisions, like what is the availability of food in your house? Like
right.
to some of these like practical strategies. Like one thing that I did, I took all my condiments that are always in like the door of the fridge, and I put them in the vegetable drawer,
Mm.
because the vegetable drawer is a cemetery for vegetables. Okay,
It is. I have salad
so
mixed in there dying right now.
yeah, it's all wet and brown. But you don't open the fridge and you're like, oh, ketchup, and eat it, you know. So you're always gonna find the condiment when you need it. So I put all that stuff in the veggie drawer, and then the door is where all the veggies are. So that stuff's more right there. You might get used to that. Hey, move it eye level in your fridge. So when you open it, it's right there. So sometimes you got to just move things around, make them more present. Stop buying things that you don't have control over. And the ease of access. I heard this once: you say no once in the grocery store, you say no every day at home.
Right.
When it comes to these junk food products. So setting up your environment is huge for success. Just like the environment of the people that you're around. If you're around a bunch of whiny, complaining people who always just want to go drinking every Friday, how are you enjoying your life if you don't want to be doing that, but those are the people that you're hanging out with? So
Right.
then you either get sucked into it and you feel bad about it, you don't even enjoy it, or you break away from those friends and you feel bad about it. But you have to trust that the new friends are around the corner. Just like you got over the loss of your fifth grade friends, you got over the loss of your eighth grade friends, you got over the loss of your high school friends.
Right.
You're going to get over the loss of these adult friends that might be dragging you down.
Right.
You
And I
know,
have two more quick questions, and then we'll go ahead
yeah.
and wrap it up. But first question is, you mentioned earlier like unalignment. And what is the difference in your opinion between being unaligned and just feeling resistance towards something?
Um, to me, alignment is what is the thing that you are the most excited about,
Mm.
the thing that fires you up the most. That's who you truly are.
Hmm.
So for example, just for me right now, shifting the way that I'm coaching people, I'm personally at a place I'm not excited talking about macros with people
Me either. For those
who have
listeners,
not
y'all know
gone.
I love to talk about it, but like we
Yeah,
gotta get deeper.
I'm not excited about talking about it, especially with people who haven't done this kind of stuff. Like, hey, once you know who you are and you're like, hey, let's fuck around and find out. I'm ready. Like, once you kind of figure out you get a little bit more in line, you're excited about life, you're totally fine with failure. You totally separate from the consequence or the outcome of what you're pursuing. And I just want to find out what happens when I'm doing macros and I have a training program. Yeah, that's exciting because those people aren't getting pissed off because they messed up over the weekend.
Right.
Like, I'm down for that. I'm down for doing a seminar at a gym and talk about macros and all that. But these one-on-one conversations with people who are just so on the line with their life, I'm just not interested. So it doesn't excite me. I'm not going to keep doing that just because it's safe for business. I'm going
Mm.
to pursue what is exciting for me. I love having these conversations. I could do this literally all day. I could have
Right.
conversations like this. I mean, no problem. So, what's alignment? What actually excites you? And I think a lot of people, they get excited about something, and then the ego, all that stuff, the societal programming, all that stuff comes in and goes, "That's silly. Don't just. You're good. You got a good job. Just get your
Mm.
pension, get your retirement, stay there. Blah blah blah. You're fine the way you are." All that kind of stuff. So figure like what actually excites you. Get fun back in your life again.
Mhm.
If you look back when you were a kid and what things did excite you, maybe start doing some of those things again. Try to bring fun back in your life. I think that's a massive part of people's health that they ignore and they don't see value in.
Mhm.
Fun, laughing, all those things are so important.
Mhm.
um, so in terms of that question of alignment, what excites you, pursue that with as much passion as you can until you can no longer pursue it, or something new comes up, and then you can pursue that. We don't have to pick a path and be there forever.
Right.
So yeah, that would be to me what's alignment. What are you excited about?
Nice. And then like
There's another part of that question though.
Yeah, and then what's the difference between that and just feeling resistance? Because example, I used to feel like, oh, like this isn't in alignment with me, but I was getting confused of like this isn't in alignment,
Mm,
and I was just feeling resistance because it was my next
yeah.
level of growth and it didn't feel good.
Well, yeah, it's knowing that there's going to be resistance.
Mhm.
Every aspect of our life is just going to be like the scale. You
Right.
know, on your way up, as you're ascending in any way in life, it's going to go up and down just like the scale does. But are you trending in an ascending direction? That was a post I just
Mm,
made the other day about this. You have to know that there's going to be resistance. And then is that resistance external? Is it internal? Why is it internal? Is it because, hey, it's not going as smooth as you thought because you had expectation of outcome,
mm,
which is a big problem? Pursue it without expectation of outcome. So is that resistance actually really there? Or did you just not get you didn't drop 5 pounds quick enough, quote unquote, for the
right.
body weight analogy? So you're like, this isn't for me. I
It's
only lost 2 pounds this month. This isn't for me.
which is
I'm out of
great.
alignment.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So it's so to me that would be if I'm still excited about it, passionate, I'm fine with the resistance.
Mm,
It's yeah. So I don't know. It's expect resistance, but then maybe kind of investigate what is that resistance really.
right.
What are you classifying as resistance? Like for example, for you, like what would be what you class? What was the resistance?
The resistance was is that I wasn't good at the task as fast as I thought I would be good at the task, and I didn't like the feeling of not feeling good enough, so I just
There
didn't
you
wanna
go.
do it. I just wanted to turn around and do
That,
something else.
perfect example.
Yeah,
The expectation of outcome.
right.
You didn't lose the weight quick enough. You weren't good enough at that fast enough,
Right.
right?
Yeah,
I mean, everything that you are good at, you sucked at the beginning.
right.
You know, I mean, these are conversations I have with my 11-year-old. He's like, he'll get fired up. He played baseball for the first time this year, and he did a really good job. And he starts to get upset about certain things, and I'm like, dude, this is your first year playing, man. Like,
Right.
it's going to take years for these things to become more natural for you.
Mhm.
Um, you know, and just like praise him for being excited for getting out there. But yeah, it's that I didn't get good enough quick enough. Yeah, expectation of outcome. That's yeah, it's very minor resistance, but you pushed through it and you didn't quit that, or did you quit too
No,
soon?
I didn't come here, so we didn't
Nice,
quit. But,
nice,
yeah,
nice.
it's of course,
Yeah,
it's that
and there's a time when, yeah, I think there's a time when sometimes you got to cut your losses. Yeah, there's sometimes where people don't quit. It's like, is this even in alignment?
right,
Maybe you should quit. I put so much time into it. You know, being a
yeah,
high school teacher, you see these high school kids that are in relationships and they're fighting all the time and miserable. You're like, but we've been through so much together. Like, that's the reason to stay together?
right. We've been together X amount of time, we've been through so much, it's like, that is I like that, like, knowing when to cut your losses and knowing the difference between, like, healthy like, the no quit mentality, like, knowing when it
Yeah.
actually is time to actually move on.
Yeah.
I like that.
Yeah. Like I have that driving school I told you about. My plan is to close it at the end of this year.
Yeah,
I make money from it. I'm for the most part hands off. It, I'm not excited about it. When things come up that are the smallest thing, I lose my shit. I'm like, you gotta be fucking kidding me. This person's calling me this about this. This is da 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 da, whatever it might be.
resentment.
Is that I'm gonna deal with that?
Yeah,
I'm doing everything I can to get hands off because I'm so unpassionate about it.
right.
I'm going to do all that just to make an extra whatever couple dollars a year, well more than a couple dollars, but enough that keeps me in it. And
Right.
I'm like, no, this isn't how I'm going to live my life. I'm not going to let a dollar direct this and then create more problems for me. It's not in alignment with me. So that resistance is telling me in this situation to get out of it.
Mhm.
It's too much. Yeah, that's a yeah different kind of resistance. And I'm like,
That's
yeah,
a good
I'm out.
example of
I want to get out.
unalignment, like, literally just
Yeah.
constant resentment, constant just like, "Ugh, ugh," it's
Yep.
like, "Alright, this is not resistance at this point, this is, like, unalignment." And that's how
Yeah.
I had been feeling about, like, the only like, I can talk about, like, the practical stuff, but only when I'm making space to talk about this stuff, right? It's like
Yeah.
it's almost like I miss it, I'm like, "Okay, I miss talking about, like, just surface level nutrition stuff because I've been able to have room to talk about the deeper stuff, which I need.
Yeah.
Didn't have it. ain't no fucking way I can talk about just like protein and how it allows you to,
Yeah.
boost your metabolism, whatever.
Yeah.
So
And I could see myself getting excited about that stuff again
yeah,
as I kind of like explore all this stuff more and like I'm, wrapping my head around it, just really living in it. I could see myself getting excited about talking about those things again and I'll ebb and flow. But it's interesting because like that resistance, there might, to almost answer it more clearly, like you might get that resistance of I'm not good enough.
mhm,
We know that that's not real resistance.
right,
We know that that's our brain telling us that.
right,
So that could be a way for somebody to maybe figure out I'm facing this resistance. Well, what is the resistance? I just don't feel like I'm good enough at this. Well,
mhm,
that's just the natural progression of ascending.
right,
You're going to feel that way. And then as people do start to fall into those patterns, are you getting out of it quicker? If
mhm,
you're getting out of that negative thought pattern quicker than you used to, that is progress. So
mhm,
don't quit on this journey that you're on because, hey, these times are getting shorter and shorter. And eventually you will get to a place where I don't like this feeling right now. This is not good, but I'm going to become so disconnected from it and just let it happen because I know at the end of the day, it all works out anyway. I mean, think about every other time somebody was frustrated they had the piece of bread. It worked out. They were fine.
right,
Like they moved on with their life the next day, and then with enough time, you start going, all right, I used to get upset about the bread. I'm not going to get upset about the bread. It's like, that's
yeah,
growth.
that's growth.
Maybe you're making the same decision, but your response to it is,
Different.
is getting better. And that's the growth.
That's awesome. I love how you said that
Yeah.
because that's a lot of the times we put so much weight on like these big shiny achievements and like even in just like in the health and fitness, like, oh, I lost X amount of pounds in this amount of time. And it's like this is the actual real, stuff that's gonna nobody can take that away from you. Like nobody can take that
Yeah.
away from you, this kind of work. Um,
Yeah.
and so this is super, super helpful, Jim. Like, do you have any last words? Okay. Do you have any like last
Nah.
kind of final, for anybody listening who's, I know that they're getting epiphanies, that there's a lot of shifts happening already. Um, yeah, like what would be like just your last kind of final advice and how can people connect with you?
Yeah, the easiest way in Instagram at Jimmy Nutrition. Very simple. Host a podcast called the Other Side Lifestyle Podcast, and my website's othersidelifestyle.com. You hear the phrase "lean into discomfort" all the time, and all the stuff that we talked about today is the uncomfortable things that we deal with in our life, and leaning into it just means like to investigate it a little bit more. Why does this make me uncomfortable? Why am I so resistant to this change? Where did this thought come from? Why am I believing it? Do I have to continue to believe it? That's kind of just that leaning into the discomfort of stuff, just like we lean into the discomfort of the physical areas,
Right.
pushing that last rep,
Right.
getting that last 10 grams of protein, finishing that 100 ounces of water, whatever it might be. So we lean into those things and just remember everything. It's all connected, the physical and the spiritual. One is not greater than the other. But if we can really strip everything away, find out who we really are, find that love for ourselves again, it's going to be much easier to treat your physical body better. Because you do, at the end of the day, my goal with people, even when I've always said it's more than nutrition. When I was really just focusing on the physical stuff, it's because I want people to experience more life.
Right.
It's not to look a certain way. If your body is not stopping you from hiking a trail and you like hiking, go hike the trail. You're waiting for this body to be able to allow you to hike the trail. And for some people, you might just have to start training for Disney World, and it's okay.
Yeah.
It's like you're taking your kids to Disney World and you're exhausted. You can't get through that whole day walking around. That's Stop training for a fucking marathon.
Right.
Train for Disney World.
I like
And
that.
then once Disney World becomes easy, then you can start training for the next thing and the next thing, because what you're capable of doing with your body now will start to change. Those capabilities will increase as you become more fit mentally, spiritually, physically, and then you'll be able to experience more of life. I don't want my body to ever stop me from experiencing something in life,
Love that.
because this is like if you're into the spiritual, this is like our spirit's chance to experience life on earth.
Right.
And when you don't treat yourself well, you are taking away your core self, your spirit's opportunity to experience this human experience. And with that human experience is going to be happiness and joy. And it's going to be misery, depression, sadness, hurt, pain. So one cannot exist without the other. So when that pain and that hurt and those things start to come up and those self-limiting beliefs, be like, this is part of the human experience. And this is what it feels like to feel hurt.
Right.
And I just have to ride this out like a wave. And then the joy and the happiness and all that stuff will come and I'll get to experience that. So yeah,
That's awesome.
I don't know.
I love that.
I just go on rants. I'm sorry.
No, that was perfect. That was literally perfect. I think it's a perfect way to wrap up today. This was awesome, and it's exactly how I pictured it. And for those listening, I know you got value from today, let us know. Let Jim know. Let me know. And there's definitely going to be more to come. And thank you so much for being here with me today, Jim. And we'll wrap it up there.
Absolutely.
Bye, y'all.
Thank you.